Hello and welcome back to another video. Today's video is between the Nexus 4 and the iPhone 5. And I wanted to do a comparison in terms of hardware, software, talk a little bit about their specs, about their ecosystem, stuff like that. So first of all, before we start, I wanted just to say thank you very much to EE in the UK for supplying me with this device, the iPhone 5 here. It's the 64 gigabyte model. So thank you very much for allowing me to do a review on this, or sort of a comparison with the Nexus 4. And before I say anything else, it's better late than never to do this comparison, because I have had problems getting my hands on the Nexus 4 and I've only been able to get it recently. So that's why sort of the overdue comparison is out now. But let's start off by looking at the iPhone 5 first of all. So it comes in 16, 32 and 64 gigabyte versions. This is the 64 gigabyte here. And the storage is non-expandable, and it comes either in a white or a black. And you can see it here, the sort of white on the front, and then it's got this sort of shiny silvery bit on the back, and then the Apple logo here. It has iOS 6.1. It runs iOS 6.1. Let's see if I can get this up just to confirm. You should be able to see it here, 6.1. Where are we? Not focusing. There it says the version 6.1, and it's powered by an A6 processor, Apple's custom A6 processor, 1 gigahertz dual core. It has you can see here, a 4-inch display with a resolution of 1136 by 640 pixels across, which gives it a pixel density of 326 ppi. This is obviously Apple's infamous Retina display. And obviously in a 4-inch form factor here, rather than the 3.5-inch that was on the previous iPhones. On the back, you can see it's got an 8 megapixel camera and an LED flash. Underneath this sort of silvery cover here is the non-removable 1440 milliamp hour battery. And the front-facing camera is a 1.2 megapixel for use with FaceTime and Skype. It does have 4G, as you can see here. It says here I'm actually on Wi-Fi, but it does have 4G. Unfortunately, I'm not in an area to be able to test this, but I do have friends who have this, or anyway using EE in the UK, and they have very, very good speed. So 4G is coming to the UK finally. Also, just to have a look at around the device, on the right hand side you can see the nano SIM card slot. On the top of the device is the power button as well. So you can see that here a little bit better. Then on the left hand side you have the silence switch, the sort of up or down, and then the volume buttons, nice protruding volume buttons. On the bottom is pretty much where all the connections are, so you can see the lightning bolt adapter and the 3.5mm headphone jack, as well as the speakers. Now let's compare this to the Nexus 4 in terms of specs. Let me actually get my cover off this. So these phones come in a flavor of 8 or 16 gigabyte storage, non-expandable as well. Google tends to do that with their phones, just like Apple, not allowing you to expand your storage, so you're kind of limited to what you put on it. As I said, the same as the iPhone 5, but you don't have the high sort of storage phone like the 64 gigabyte. Then it comes in black only. There have been rumors online of a white version, but this is the black so far, and that's only available. Then it runs Android 4.2.1, so let me just show you that in the settings as well. It takes a little bit to get into this, but you can see here Android version 4.2.1, Nexus 4. And this is the vanilla Android UI, so this doesn't have any TouchWiz or anything like that running on top. This is exactly the latest 4.2.1. It's powered by a 1.5 gigahertz S4 Pro CPU, and it has 2 gigabytes of RAM. The display is a 4.7-inch display with a resolution of 1280 by 768 to accommodate the soft keys at the bottom, and that gives it a screen resolution, or sorry, a PPI, a pixel per inch screen density, shall I say, of 320. On the back, you can see there's an 8 megapixel camera here, and then a flash right above it. The battery is, as well as the iPhone, a non-removable 2100 milliamp hour battery. And the front-facing camera, you can see on the top right, is a 1.3 megapixel camera. And this does not have 4G, but it does have NFC, which is the near field communication chip built in. so you can use things like S-Beam or sending photos across, or in the future hopefully paying with it. Then just to give you a look around the device as well, you can see at the top there's the 3.5mm headphone jack, if it would focus. Then you have the microphone there as well. Volume rocker on the left hand side. Then if I go to the bottom, you can see there is the micro USB port, charging port, and then the dock connectors that hopefully will be available in the future. And then on the right hand side, there is the power button. And also, before I forget, underneath the volume rocker, there is the micro SIM card slot. And I'll see if that's visible. That's a little bit more visible in the light here. You can see the micro SIM card slot. Then there is a speaker on the bottom as well. So that's that here, compared up to the iPhone. As I said, it's standard bottom here. Now let's get on with it and look through a little bit of the software. So the iPhone 5, it runs its sort of standard UI that you've been seeing on these phones since launch, pretty much. It has the sort of standard icon layout where you get 4 and then 5 down, 4 across, 5 down. They've actually increased this with the new iPhone. It used to be 4 and 4, and then you just get your 4 standard dock buttons here. In terms of customization, there isn't really much that can be done apart from changing your wallpaper and your lock screen wallpaper and stuff. You get sort of these swipe down notifications nowadays that have been included, but like I said, otherwise there isn't much that can be done in terms of, you know, getting custom icons, things like that. That sort of Android users, you know, love and know. The quick access to your search bar is by just swiping over from the home screen. And you also don't get any of the sort of, you know, pinch in gestures or anything like that. You don't even get, I don't think, like the iPhone 5 gestures where if I, for example, was to open music and then close it like that, that doesn't work like it normally does on the new iPad, I think. Then to look at the Nexus 4, you get your home screen, you can see here. You also don't get on the stock launcher the pinch to zoom sort of thing. But you can customize your icon, so you can see here, that's my app drawer. You also get widgets, which is you know, a massive benefit, I think, for the phone, because it gives you sort of quick access to certain features like, you know, your clock, your calendar, your maps, stuff like that. You also you can change your wallpaper, which is normal. To access your search function is you have the bar right at the top, and then you also have the search feature at the top, which you know, I'll get to in a minute in terms of Siri as well. Like I said, you can install custom launchers, custom you know, themes, custom icon packs. And it also features the sort of notification area that you can swipe down, same as the iPhone here. You can see you can swipe down from the top, which gives you sort of your latest email, stuff like that. But you also get these quick settings on the latest one, 4.2.1, which this is running, and you can access your battery. You can see the battery. You can access your Wi-Fi, your you know, your brightness, your settings, Bluetooth, etc., stuff like that. It saves you having to go into the settings menu and activating it like you do on the iPhone. Then comparing the displays on both devices, you can see, starting off with the Nexus 4, the viewing angles, they're pretty good. When it gets to extreme viewing angles, they obviously is not going to be as visible, and maybe the camera doesn't reflect it but very well. But the colors are nicely saturated, not overly saturated like for example, a Super AMOLED display you get on the Nexus, the Galaxy phones, and you got on the Nexus, the previous Nexus phone. But the viewing angle's pretty okay. You know, nothing too bad here, nothing that you sort of unusable, not like the first generation ones. You can see iPhone viewing angles here, pretty much the same, maybe a little bit better in terms of viewing angles. So you can see it's pretty good. Like I said, the camera maybe doesn't pick it up as well as you'd like it to. Then let's have a look at the keyboards. So what you get presented with on the Nexus is the sort of the stock Google keyboard, but you also can use swipe features. So you can actually swipe across the keyboard and, you know, type. So if you're using it, for example, one-handed, then it's difficult to sometimes type. So you can say you know, the weight, whatever you want to write. I've tried to do something else, but I'm not really concentrating. So the quick brown birth, yeah. But you get the idea. You can swipe, or you can just sort of do normal texting, and you can see the letters pop up nicely. Nice big keyboard. Landscape, here you can see it, and it covers the keyboard pretty much entirely. The only thing you get is the black bar on the bottom right here, which is obviously the navigation. They move their orientation depending on how you hold the phone. Now if I compare this to the iPhone keyboard, you get this sort of the standard keyboard here. You don't get the swipe gestures. You still get the key popping up. So so if I was writing the quick, you know, I don't even know if I've written this properly, but you don't get much in terms of customizations like this. I don't think Spotlight works in landscape mode, but let's see if I can do landscape in Safari. So let's go into the search in Safari, and you can see here, it goes into landscape as well, but you sort of get the gray areas down the side, so it's not fully utilized on the full screen, which is a bit of a shame, because I think the screen is slightly on the small side anyway, 4 inches. But you know, if they sort of expanded that keyboard a little bit better, maybe there'd be even less typos in terms of you know, typing in landscape mode. I mean, it's a pretty good keyboard, predictable as well, so you know, you shouldn't have too much problems typing with it. Then browser-wise, you get obviously stock Safari on this one, on the iPhone 5, and then you get Chrome, which is the standard browser on the Nexus 4. And I haven't actually signed in yet, but I'm going to ignore this, and I'm going to try and go to mobileburn's website, and I'm going to try and go on it at the same time. So we're ready to go, and I'm going to click go to see which page loads faster. None of these pages, the pages haven't been loaded on either browser, so there is no caching or anything like that involved. They're both on the same Wi-Fi network, so let's go. So there we have the Nexus 4 almost finished rendering, and that's it done on Google Chrome. And here we're getting the iPhone 5 just to finish. So again, it might not be a true test, but you can see the and also you can see the screen real estate here. You get a lot more content, I think, on the phone because it's so much bigger. It's much more readable. You know, double tapping, scrolling, all that works really well. You get the same here. You know, double tap to zoom in. And also Safari tends to sometimes give you, depending on the page you're on, the reader option, where actually it gets rid of all the pictures, all that crap that's not necessary, and actually allows you to read just the text, which is a nice feature, and it can come in handy when you've got sort of really cluttered web pages. And then to go back, you go like that. Then that brings me on to multitasking. So say if I was to go back into the browser, and I know you can see Chrome here, but say if I was, you know, somewhere else in another app, say the Play Store, and I wanted to go back into the browser, multitasking works by pressing this button here on the Nexus, and then you just go into it. Whereas on the iPhone, you double tap, and then you get presented with the multitasking menu here. So, and then that brings you back to the browser. And then go home, you press home, and that's as simple as that. And on the iPhone, you obviously just have the one button. Whereas on the Nexus, you can see the 3 different buttons: the recent apps, the home, and the back button. And also to access search while we're at it, you actually swipe up to get into Google Now. And you can do the same with Siri, but it only is Siri that you can. So if you long press, it goes into Siri. But so that's the sort of one thing that you can't go straight into a search, whereas on here you can go pretty much from any app. So if I'm in the Play Store and I just swipe up, it takes me straight into search. So that's a nice way of just going straight into the search, and instead of having to sort of go out and then go into, I don't know, your browser or your search engine app. Then next thing, I wanted to talk a little bit about the app availability. Pretty much both app stores are very, very good. The iPhone App Store is gonna be better because it's been, you know, it's more widely available, more popular, and you know, the sort of developer focus has been much more on the iPhone. But I think the Google Play Store is catching up, and it's got sort of pretty much. I've done a huge comparison on this in terms of looking through certain apps, and pretty much every app that I needed was available. Yeah, there are certain apps that aren't going to be, you know, available on one of the 2 platforms. But in terms of gaming, in terms of you know, sort of useful apps, they're available on both. And I think nowadays they have to be, because, you know, I don't think either sort of you know, operating system can afford not to have one of those apps. But also what I find interesting is, because of the whole Google the iOS Maps hoo-ha, you know, there have actually been all the Google Maps on iPhone released. So you can see, I've got actually a special folder here. So you can see Google Currents, which is a news reader. You can see Chrome has been released. You can see Play Books, which is like Kindle or like iBooks for Google. You can see Google Drive, Google Maps, obviously with the free sat nav. You can see the Google Search thing, Google Play Music, which isn't the sort of the official app. You get Local and you get Gmail. I find it interesting that these apps are available on the sort of Apple platform, whereas you might not get Safari, for example, on the Nexus 4. I find it interesting that, you know, that's a sort of a thing, the way Apple have gone. But You know, that's in terms of app availability and being able to use Google Apps. So for example, if you're used to the Google environment, like, you know, your contacts, stuff like that, you will be able to, you know, your Google Books, your Google Maps, stuff like that, you will be able to use it on your iPhone. Now let's have a look at lock screens and the differences you get from your lock screens, and especially with the new 4.2.1. So let's start off with the Apple lock screen. And you will get notifications on the lock screen. You can see the clock at the top, and then you should get notifications like your calendar. You can set all that up in your settings. Also, to unlock it, you just swipe over and that takes you straight into your home screen. And also the camera, you swipe up to get into the camera. So pretty standard lock screen, as we'd expect from Apple. You know, does the job very well and has been about for ages. People are used to it. Now, the lock screen on the Nexus 4 is slightly different. You can see already the animation when you turn it on. This tells you that's how to unlock it. You get your clock here the same as you get on the iPhone. You can see that here. But what they've included in 4.2.1 finally is widgets. It has been available in third-party apps, but finally this is available on as a sort of stock. So what you get is you can actually swipe over and you get widgets, and you can see the plus bit here, and you can click it and then you get presented with a whole set of widgets. So far there are only so many that are available, but you will be able to, for example, add your Google Calendar or your Gmail, your digital clock, your Google Plus post. So for example, if I add my Google Plus, there you go, straight away it's up, and then I can swipe down to expand it or swipe up to go back to the unlock thing. Then next, you can also open a camera straight from the lock screen by swiping over to the right, and then you get presented with the camera. You can see here, and I'm not going to open it just now. And then last but not least, you see the little circle down the bottom here underneath the lock. That allows you to go straight into Google search. So you swipe up and it goes straight into Google now. Really, really like this feature because the amount of times I've used the phone and just swiped up and bam, gone straight into the search feature. Now let's do a few benchmarks on these devices in terms of showing you what the sort of numbers they produce. I'm not a massive fan of benchmarks. I've never been. But some people like to go by this and get their phones, so I just thought I'd satisfy that bit as well and show you what benchmark scores you get. I'm going to use Geekbench because it's available on both devices, so I'm going to start Geekbench. I have run this test before so you could see the score, but I'm just going to put them side by side and I'm going to press run benchmark and come back to you when the scores are in. So the scores are in. You can see they pretty much finish simultaneously. So let's have a look at the iPhone first. You can see the score is 1663 and it gives an integer score of 1275, floating point of 2114, memory score of 1883 and stream score of 1009. Now let's have a look at the Nexus 4, what type of scores we get. We get 2053. The integer score is 1382, the floating point score is 3304, memory score is 1773, stream score is 584. So you can see overall the Nexus 4 has higher numbers. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm not going to call it anything else. Some people like to go by that, but this has nothing to do with user experience. Next thing I'm going to run is called a benchmark called GPU benchmark, and let me just start that up again. And I'm going to run purely the GPU benchmark test. I'm not going to run the whole thing and see what kind of scores we're going to get. Let's just wait for it. So you can see here, you can actually run all, or if you swipe over, you can actually just get the GPU benchmark. And I'm just going to run that once the Nexus 4 is up. And when that's up, I will run it and come back to you when the scores are in. So let me just swipe over, click on GPU benchmark on both and run it. So the scores are in. And I'm just going to put the devices one on top of each other and the other. And you can see here, the iPhone scored 4060 and the Nexus 4 scored 4358. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you like these scores, then just, you go by that. Otherwise, have a look at the rest of the video and to see what's best for you in terms of user experience and user interface. Let's talk now a little bit about build quality on both devices. And you can see they have obviously glass on the front. This has Gorilla Glass. And the iPhone's actually got a nice sort of metal aluminium construction. Feels really comfortable in the hands. But I would say if you drop either of those, it will break quite easily, to be honest. I would always put a case on my phones. But you can see there's a bit of metal on the back, whereas this is just glass. So I can see this, if this smashes, just have sort of a spider web crack or even worse. I do already have a scratch on the back. I don't know if I'll be able to show you this. So that just shows that, you know, this will, you know, scratch fairly easily if you put in your keys in your pocket with a set of keys. This will probably, you know, get the same treatment if I did it. Obviously, this is a review unit, so I'm not going to do it. This is my personal phone, actually. But in terms of build quality, yeah, I think they're pretty much on par. You know, maybe the iPhone, slight edge there. Then camera. Let's have a look on both devices so you can see how easy it is to launch the camera by just swiping up. And let's just, you know, put this old bumper case I've got. And you can see here, let's hold it right in front of the camera, and you can see the wide angle, or the angle of the lens. So you can see it covers pretty much the whole, you know, the case covers pretty much the whole screen. Now let's try the same thing with the iPhone, just to get an idea. So you can see almost identical. There's not much difference. They're both quite good wide angle lenses. You can see here. In terms of functionality, the new feature introduced on the Nexus 4 is photosphere. So you get all the options down here, bottom right. You can do obviously video recording 1080p, you can do panorama mode, and you can do a photosphere. And photosphere is basically a 360-degree picture. You take multiple pictures up, down, left, right, on a diagonal to cover the image, and then Google's sort of magic does the rest, and you can then get a 360 panorama, which can only be viewed on compatible devices. What you can also adjust is you can have HDR photos. You can obviously switch to the front-facing camera. You can control your flash. You can control your exposure. You get into the settings, and you get white balance as well. The settings are literally just to adjust the quality of the image. And in terms of features on the iPhone, you get obviously your flash control. You get your options in terms of a grid and HDR and a panorama. And then obviously video, 1080p video as expected. And no photosphere, because obviously this is available on Google only. So features wise, I think the Nexus 4 edges ahead slightly there. Then, you know, not much difference. This isn't a Galaxy S3 camera app, so a little sort of bonus point there for the Nexus 4 in terms of features purely through the photosphere, and I have tried it and it is good. So to summarize the devices, they are the flagship devices, and they are for a good reason. The flagship devices, they're really, really good phones, you know, perfectly usable depending on, you know, which is your preferred choice, really. If you're sort of the type of person to use the iTunes, stuff like that, then, you know, go ahead, get the iPhone 5. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's still, you know, more than good enough. People talk about power, you know, and specs and, you know, this and that. You see people talk about dual core and quad core processors. You know, the iPhone has only, you know, in inverted commas, has a dual core processor, and it's more than good enough for this phone. Obviously on Android, you now have Project Butter with the latest 4.2.1 version, and or Jelly Bean General 4.1, 4.2.1. And the specs on this are slightly better in terms of, you know, higher screen resolution and stuff. But, you know, there isn't much difference between the two. If you're the type of person who likes customization, playing around, changing your home screen around a lot, you know, using custom launchers, custom, you know, app icons, stuff like that, being able to route it to get more out of your phone. You know, if you like to access your file system and manage it properly, which you can't do with the iPhone, then, you know, go ahead with this. But, you know, it's a very, very neck and neck. So, again, if you've enjoyed this video, as I always say, please give us a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Hopefully a lot more content coming in terms of comparisons like this. Any comments, queries, please leave them down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.